grasshopper racing against each other. It was 3 or 4 years ago that I had my first race against Carl, and it was really, really pleasurable to beat him. See if Stephen can do the same. Carl is a master tactician, taught many, many riders here at his detriment. In terms of wattage, Carl's pumping out over 1600 watts at the moment. He's doing quite well. If he's ever been racing in his peak, it's right now. Stephen, still very young but quite fast, been training all through the winter. The move's been made by Stephen, comes over, caught Carl napping, took him and gapped him. There is a huge gap that Carl's going to have to try and bridge. Carl has a long sprint. Carl rides those big gears and winds up, but I don't think it's going to be enough today, although that gap is closing up. Always throw at the line, that's what Carl always says, and unlucky.
Yeah, you're going to get it.
Chris Dan leading. Chris Dan leading out, taking Dino right up to the rails. Both are very, very experienced in the art of track racing. They know a lot of tactics and they know a lot of different manoeuvres that they can do to outfox each other. They'll be going head to head, just watching each other for the moment. Chris Dan staying nice and high, making sure Dino doesn't have any room to move. Don't open any gates or get caught napping. Both of them have been racing at disc throughout the winter, so they're nice and fit, ready to go. It's on the bell lap and no one's made a move yet. And Chris Dan is gone. It's a very tactical move there. Dino's got the big disc wheel. He's got the outright speed. He's going to have to come over the top of Chris. It's going to be a hard slog to do it, but it looks like it's going to be close. And Dino's got it on the front. Still quite young riders, but they are getting the experience they need, and this is what it's all about.
Matt's doing the F1, warming his guys up.
Both coming quite high. Matt following very, very close on Callum's wheel. And Callum just looking over his shoulder, can't quite see Matt there. Tries to flick him out. Both playing a very tactical game. Matt's probably just a little bit more in control at the moment, but Callum is shaking him. And he has shaken him straight off. Matt now coming side by side. They're getting very slow. No track standing allowed. But they are foxing a lot. Playing a really good game of cat and mouse. Who's going to make the move? Who's going to force the other into a weaker position? Matt's still trailing, but very, very close on Cullen's wheel. That's the bell. This is the final lap. The move is going to have to come. We just don't know from who yet. Both choosing to take the lower lines on the track, not using the height. Matt's coming up, so is Callum, and Matt's foxing. He's made his move. Callum got caught napping, looking over the wrong shoulder, but Callum is chasing. And Matt's going to have to keep spinning those legs. That gap is closing. This might be a very, very close race. It's going to come down to the throw. Jared leading out, John.
Both riders famous for fiddling with equipment to put a polite vent on it. Yes, Carl, both pull a wheel and it will be funny.
You right, Carl?
Are you having an asthma attack, Carl?
Almost. No, I'm good. Bloody kid.
You trained him?
I'm just trying to push Jared around there a little bit, but Jared quite happy just to hold his position. Now, in terms of power to weight ratios, John's strong, but he's pretty big, so he probably doesn't really want a jump race. Whereas Dad would be absolutely what Jared will want. Jared will want it nice and slow, and he'll rely on a rapid acceleration towards the finish. So there'll be two very contrasting styles here. And at the moment, Jared really not giving John any room at all to move, or very little, and doing a good job of controlling position on the track. John's had a couple of goes at just trying to intimidate Jared, but Jared not having a bar of it. The bell rings, a little bit of a feint, but not much. The pace still not really on. Jared makes a move coming into turn 1 and jumps away. John's going to have to wind up a fairly big gear to catch him. Jared's opened up a pretty big gap, but it's not too late now for him to draw him back. John can get on top of the big gear that he's on. About a 10-15 metre gap at the moment. Jared not slowing. But here comes John winding it in, but I think Jared's going to have enough to stay away. And in the end, Jared Wilson takes that one.
Top end speed, but at the end of it, a much higher end speed. So he'd prefer a longer sprint, and Jared the shorter sprint.
Speaking of the contrasting styles and gears, it'll be James Dan and Neil Robinson. And you won't find two more dissimilar riders in terms of how they want a race to go. James will want it short and sharp. He's a very explosive young man. He's a starter in the team sprint for the state team.
Neil qualifying fastest today with a 12.6, and James Dan not quite as fast, but still very fast on the 12.9.
So Neil's done a good job of controlling the pace from behind and forcing James to probably ride a little faster than he would have liked early. But he's got on top of that gear. Neil trying to give himself a little bit of draft to run into with a little bit of a break and run, which is a tactic we've practiced a lot. Now you can see the speed difference coming up the back straight as Neil starts to mow down James. Will he have the power to come past him on the bend, or can James lift up the finishing straight?
It's going to come down
to a little bit of a hook there, but 0.9. So about 0.2 between these two in terms of speed. Both riders very new to this track. Lau, I suspect, is very familiar with outdoor concrete velodromes. David, probably more a disc rider. David working in with the Victorian Sprint Group in Under Hilton. Lau training with my little group on Friday nights and Sundays in a disc. Again, we may see a contrast in styles here, but Lau's got a lot of speed.
And reminding the riders there are no track stands, so making sure that the pace is kept to a walking pace. Looking like it might have just slowed up a little bit there. David making sure he's looking over his shoulder. He's not quite sure which shoulder to be looking over at the moment. Lau keeps darting up and down, making it much, much more difficult for the leading rider to keep a steady pace and read what's going on.
If I was David at this point, I'd probably be fairly happy with how the race is progressing. He'd probably want a short, sharp one as well. Maybe not quite as sharp as a James Dan would like. But I suspect he's on a little gear than Lau, so he may be looking to start from a lower speed. John Cochran ringing the bell. I've just lost one eardrum. The pace still down with less than a lap to go. They're down to about 250 metres, still no move. So this is going to be a jump. Who's going to do it? Who's going to make the move? There's not much of a gap there underneath David. He's done a pretty good job. Lau makes the move. David immediately responds. Lau with a bit more speed around the outside. He's out-jumped David. He has a little bit of run off the bank. Drops down into the lane. And he's jumped well clear.
Perfect example of how you can use the bank to gain speed. Both riders jumped at the same time.
He's a second year under 17. He's a very strong young man. First year under 17. He's a first year under 17. Right. So Nick will have his work cut out for him to beat Connor in this one. Nick will be on a bigger gear. You can see the difference in the cadence as the two riders ride around. So a faster race is going to suit Nick if he can keep the pace a little bit higher and try and nullify Connor's jump. Connor does have one hell of a jump. Nick will be aware of that. Connor putting some pressure on behind from speed and drops down early and takes the lead. He's going to make it a long sprint. But he hasn't fully committed yet. He's still probably only riding about 80 or 90% waiting.
Come on, Nick, get up, Nick, get up!
Nick in the draft now. Connor's going to need a second kick.
Oh, there it is. Come on!
Now it's going to get interesting as they come around the bend, because last time they went around the bend, Connor did a pretty bad job of staying in the lane, but this time he's managed to do it. So there's a little bit of hook coming out. All right.